He learned to pull bread from thin air and saved billions of people from starvation. Then he built a weapon of pure horror and murdered thousands of men with a rolling cloud of poison. One single man, a savior and a killer at once. This is the impossible story of Fritz Haber. Keeps half the planet alive today, and whose other great invention choked men to death in the mud of the trenches. No scientist in all of history is more loved and more hated. Was he a hero, a monster, or both? To understand him, you have to go back to a world gripped by fear. By the early 1900s, the whole planet was quietly running out of food. Populations had exploded, but the soil was exhausted. Every crop on Earth needs nitrogen to grow, and the world's usable nitrogen was almost gone. The strange truth is that nitrogen was already everywhere. The very air we breathe is nearly 80% nitrogen gas, but in that form plants simply cannot touch it. The world depended instead on mineral deposits dug from distant deserts, and those precious mines were rapidly running dry. Mass starvation loomed. Fritz Haber was born in 1868 into a Jewish family in the German city of Breslau. Brilliant, ambitious, and intensely driven, he burned to be accepted as a true German. He converted to Christianity, worshipped his adopted country with a fierce devotion, and hungered above all else for greatness. As a chemist, Haber took on what many called an impossible dream: to rip nitrogen straight out of the air and force it into a form that living plants could actually feed on. For years, the problem defeated the greatest minds in science. Then, in 1909, Haber finally cracked it. Using crushing pressure and searing heat, he combined nitrogen from the air with hydrogen to create ammonia, the essential key to fertilizer. In his cramped laboratory, a slow, steady drip of precious liquid appeared. He had quite literally learned how to make bread out of the empty air itself. An engineer named Carl Bosch took Haber's fragile little experiment and built it into something truly colossal. Vast factories rose across Germany, turning ordinary air into fertilizer by the ton. The Haber-Bosch process was born, and it would go on to change the destiny of the entire human race. Suddenly, food was no longer limited by the earth itself. Fields that once fed a single family could now feed many. The great famine that had threatened the entire world simply vanished. Crops flourished, populations soared, and humanity broke free of a hard limit that had bound it for all of history. Consider this for a moment. Scientists estimate that the food grown using Haber's discovery now sustains around half of all the people alive on Earth. If you are watching this, the nitrogen inside your own body may have passed through his machines. Billions of us exist only because of him. For this one miracle, Fritz Haber was awarded the Nobel Prize. He had conquered hunger itself, one of mankind's oldest and cruelest enemies. He should be remembered as one of the greatest saviors who ever lived. But that is only half of his story. The other half is a waking nightmare. In 1914, the First World War erupted across Europe. Haber, the proud patriot, threw himself and all his genius at the feet of the German army. He lived by a chilling motto: in times of peace, a scientist belongs to the world, but in war, he belongs to his country. The war bogged down into the frozen hell of the trenches, a stalemate of barbed wire and mud. Haber offered his masterpiece, a weapon to break the deadlock. He would take chlorine, a common industrial gas, and turn it into a silent, drifting killer. He became the father of modern chemical warfare. April 22, 1915, near the ruined town of Ypres in Belgium, Haber came to the front lines in person to direct the attack himself. Under his cold command, German soldiers waited beside thousands of hidden cylinders, watching the wind, waiting for the one perfect moment to open them all. Then the valves hissed open. A vast, sickly green-yellow cloud rose up and rolled silently across no man's land toward the French lines. When it reached the enemy trenches, chaos erupted. Men clawed at their own throats, blinded and choking, drowning slowly in the poisoned open air around them. Thousands of men were poisoned that single day, and many died in slow agony. It was one of the first true weapons of mass destruction, and Fritz Haber was thrilled. He saw it as a great triumph of German science. The army made him a captain, and he rushed home to celebrate. But someone at home was watching all this in pure horror. His wife, Clara Immerwahr, was a gifted chemist too, the very first woman ever to earn a doctorate in chemistry from her university. She was brilliant and deeply principled, and she believed science existed to give life, never to destroy it. To Clara, what her husband had done was a perversion of everything she held sacred. She called his poison gas work a monstrous corruption of science, a clear sign of barbarism. She begged him again and again to stop the madness, but Fritz dismissed her and accused her of betraying the fatherland. On the very night of Haber's celebration party, Clara finally reached her breaking point. She walked out into the garden, took her husband's own army pistol, and shot herself through the heart. Her young teenage son found her dying there in the dark. She was only 43 years old. And how did Fritz Haber respond to his own wife's suicide? The very next morning, he simply left. He boarded a train for the Eastern Front to personally oversee the next great release of poison gas against the Russians. He left his grieving young son behind and never once looked back. So stop and really think about this one man. He saved billions of human lives and he engineered the horrific deaths of thousands. He crushed world hunger forever and he pioneered weapons of pure terror. Was Fritz Haber a hero or a monster? And where exactly would you draw the line? Then Germany lost the war. Almost overnight, the once celebrated Haber became a hunted man, his name placed on a list of suspected war criminals. Poison gas was now condemned by the entire civilized world. Fearing arrest and trial, he grew a beard and fled for a time across the border into Switzerland. Desperate to restore his shattered honor and help pay Germany's crushing war debts, Haber launched a wild and secret project. He tried to extract pure gold directly from the water of the oceans. For years he chased this dream, but the gold was far too scarce and the whole scheme collapsed. Then came the cruelest twist of all. In 1933, the Nazis seized total power in Germany. And to them, Fritz Haber, the great patriot who had personally gassed his country's enemies, was nothing more than a Jew. All his service, all his glory suddenly counted for absolutely nothing at all. The new regime ordered him to fire every Jewish scientist working in his institute. Haber refused and resigned in disgust and despair. The man who had given Germany both bread and victory was now cast out by the very nation he had worshipped his entire life. He fled, broken, into exile. Sick, heartbroken, and homeless, Haber wandered restlessly across Europe. In 1934, his weakened heart finally gave out in a lonely hotel room in Basel, Switzerland. He died utterly alone, an exile from the country he had loved more than his own conscience, more even than his own wife's precious life. But the horror did not end with his death. Years earlier, his own institute had developed a powerful new pesticide. The Nazis later refined that very research into a gas called Zyklon B. It became the poison used in the Holocaust death chambers, murdering millions, including members of Haber's own family. So what do we do with a man like Fritz Haber? His mind still feeds half the living world, yet his hands are forever stained with poison. Savior and destroyer, hero and monster, bound together in one restless soul. Perhaps he is the truest mirror of what science itself can be.